A Mortal's Journey to Immortality Episode 341. In the previous episode, Han Li escaped the deadly pursuit of three powerful heretical cultivators and used the brief moment when his sealed cultivation loosened to flee across vast distances. After carving out a temporary cave, he began planning how to restore his strength, cultivate the bright-jawed arts, and refine the two rare treasures he carried, the icy snow crystal pearl and the dangerous heavenly corpse pearl. Monarch soul divergence revealed that the corpse pearl could greatly enhance Han Li's physical body, while the snow pearl could strengthen his flames, if he could safely purify and refine them. But just as Han Li prepared for this long recovery, the old soul reminded him of a hidden danger within his divine spirit treasure. The young incarnation of the holy endless sky beast continued to grow. Slowly gaining intelligence, Han Li knew he could only face it once his strength returned. And for now, he could only wait. At the end of the previous episode, Han Li stood at a crossroads, armed with rare treasures, a risky plan for cultivation, and a sealed threat waiting inside his cauldron. What will happen next? Stay tuned. And the story continues. Perhaps, Han Li had no objections over the claimed power of the altered seven-flame fan. Regardless of their shape or form, fire attribute treasures were most likely specialized in attacks. After all, fire attribute spiritual power was unrivaled in destructive force among the elements. And Han Li understood this clearly. When Monarch Soul Divergence offered his opinion, Han Li silently agreed. He knew that once he restored his cultivation, the fan's destructive flames could become a powerful part of his arsenal. As Monarch Soul Divergence finished speaking, Han Li did not reply. Instead, he lightly waved his sleeve and tossed the two pearls into the air, striking them with a spell seal. The gold and white light of the pearls blossomed in midair, floating motionlessly before him. The two treasures pulsed with faint radiance, as if waiting for the refinement that would soon follow. Han Li blinked, then slapped his storage pouch. An assortment of jade bottles and boxes appeared as he suspended a small cauldron in the air. With practiced precision, his hands formed an incantation gesture, and a flick of his finger made the cauldron tremble. Its lid rose, circled through the air, and hovered beside the cauldron, revealing the empty interior that would soon contain a rare spirit liquid. One of the jade boxes opened on its own, revealing a pile of overflowing green powder. Han Li blew a mist of azure light over the powder. Half of the material floated up, swirling around him before descending into the cauldron. With a soft shout, he released a thin thread of azure flame directly from his mouth. The flame was small, yet it instantly ignited the cauldron, wrapping its base in roiling fire. The moment the flame left his body, Han Li's complexion paled, and a wave of weakness shook his limbs. He could not help but offer a wry smile. Extracting even a single strand of nascent flame while his magic power remained sealed was far more difficult than he had expected. The strain upon his body was still amplified by the grave wounds he had suffered in the Molan Plains. Wounds that had never fully healed. He pointed at a slender jade bottle, and it floated over to the cauldron. The lid lifted, and a stream of green liquid poured down, fusing instantly with the green powder. Han Li uttered another incantation and struck the azure flames with a spell seal, making the fire surge around the cauldron. Within moments, a faint medicinal fragrance drifted out. Noting the scent, Han Li waved his hand. A stalk of fire-red spirit grass flew out of a hovering jade box and dropped directly into the cauldron. Time passed slowly as he continued to add more rare materials, each thrown in with meticulous precision. His expression was focused, his breathing steady despite the exhaustion building in his body. After an entire day, the refinement was complete. Han Li swept his sleeve and extinguished the nascent flame beneath the cauldron. The vessel floated gently into his hand. He peered inside, studying the extremely dense liquid contained within. The spirit fluid was translucent emerald green, several inches deep, and carried an intoxicating scent. After comparing it to the description from the jade slip, Han Li felt certain that he had succeeded. "Is this spirit liquid acceptable?" he asked cautiously. Monarch Soul Divergence replied with rare approval. He admitted that Han Li's pill refinement had reached a profound level, perhaps even higher than his own peak ability. He had expected Han Li to fail twice before producing the correct result. Instead, Han Li had succeeded in a single attempt, once the heavenly corpse pearl was submerged in the liquid for an entire week. The corpse poison would be fully extracted, and Han Li would be able to consume it safely. A small smile appeared on Han Li's face. He pointed at the golden pearl, and it shot into the cauldron. The lid followed, sealing it tightly. Placing the cauldron in the corner of the room, he turned his attention to the second pearl. Unlike the first, refining this one required far less effort. He muttered an incantation and summoned a ball of purple flame into his hand. Flicking it at the snow crystal pearl, white and purple light filled the air as the purple apex flames fused with the crystal. A trace of delight appeared in Han Li's eyes. He released a mist of azure light, completely surrounding the pearl. In a blink, the gem shrank to the size of a pill and flew straight down his throat. Han Li sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and sent his consciousness inward. Inside his dantian, the pearl rested like a glittering star, wrapped within a continuously revolving lotus of purple fire. His nascent soul sat beneath it, meditating calmly, hands locked into an incantation gesture. The combination formed a mysterious, elegant scene of spiritual balance. Seeing this, Han Li felt relieved. With only his foundation establishment cultivation restored, directly cultivating the pearl was impossible. But the overbearing nature of the purple apex flames allowed him to refine the pearl slowly over time. When his full cultivation returned, he would already have partial control of it. In an emergency, he could forcibly command the treasure using the power of the purple flames. With the matter of the two pearls settled, Han Li did not move on immediately. Instead, he rested and recovered a portion of his spiritual power. Only then did he take out a spirit beast pouch and toss it into the air. A white mist unfurled, revealing a shimmering golden bubble with the weeping soul beast sleeping inside. The creature was curled comfortably, snoring within the half-formed Vajra barrier that protected it. The sight made Han Li pause between amusement and exasperation. This strange beast loved sleeping more than anything else. He had summoned it countless times over the years. Yet most of the time it was already asleep before it even emerged. Smiling helplessly, Han Li flicked a small streak of azure light. It struck the golden bubble. Shaking it gently, the beast stirred awake, letting out a playful series of cries before exploding into motion. A streak of golden light shot across the air and landed lightly on Han Li's shoulder. It rubbed its fluffy head against his neck, showing the affectionate bond it had formed through years of companionship. Han Li petted the little creature before turning his attention to the floating Vajra barrier. With a wave of his sleeve, he sent a gust of azure light toward the treasure. Brilliant light circled it, but the barrier did not react at all. He frowned and tried again, forming complex hand seals while chanting. Spell seals of different colors struck the Vajra barrier, creating ripples across the bubble's surface. Yet nothing changed. His expression grew solemn. Those were the only two treasure possession methods he knew. Monarch Soul Divergence calmly explained that the Vajra barrier was a rare treasure refined using corpse flames and Buddhist crystal relics. Because those two elements naturally opposed one another, ordinary possession techniques would not work. He advised Han Li to try a special incantation he had transmitted for the refinement of the Vajra relic. Han Li immediately agreed. After half a day of effort, the Vajra barrier finally shrank and fell into his hand. Although he could now claim ownership of it, the refinement was far from complete. Even his nascent flames could not temper it. Monarch Soul Divergence confessed that the final step required something incredibly rare, myriad-year corpse flames. When Han Li heard this, he could only roll his eyes and snort gloomily. Was he expected to march into the Snowmound Mountains and offer himself to King Glorious Blaze? Monarch Soul Divergence replied with nothing but a dismissive snort, clearly aware of the absurd difficulty involved. Just as Han Li began to feel completely helpless, the weeping soul beast suddenly leaned forward. Out of simple boredom, the small creature spat a wisp of gray-white flames from its mouth. The flame drifted lazily through the air and landed directly on the Vajra barrier. The originally motionless treasure let out a deep groaning sound as the flames engulfed it. The golden bubble fluctuated wildly within the gray fire. its form bending and pulsing as if struck by an invisible force. Han Li stared in pure shock at the sight. Myriad year corpse flame, monarch soul divergence muttered in amazement. At the border of the central and northern portions of the Jin Empire lay a region that was ranked among the smallest inland of the 36 regions of the empire but was also ranked the top 5 in terms of wealth. This wealthy land was rich in fertile fields, crossed by rivers, and dotted with towering spirit mountains. Mortals who lived near these mountains saw extraordinary sights on a daily basis. Mysterious figures dressed in Taoist robes or Buddhist kasayas flying into the sky as if riding the wind. Because of this, the teachings of Taoism and Buddhism shaped the culture of the region. And temples of both paths rose like forests across cities and villages. Rich or poor, educated or ordinary, everyone held deep respect for those spiritual traditions. Yet the region was not shaped by only those two forces. Confucian learning also had deep roots here. Across the landscape, almost 40 Confucian schools stood in towns large and small. The greatest among them trained distinguished masters of philosophy, whose disciples often rose into the highest ranks of government. Even the smallest schools, with only humble teachers, served as stepping stones for gifted students, sending promising youths upward toward opportunity and advancement. Graduates of the highest academies were welcomed by nobles, valued as advisors in matters of culture, ethics, and governance. In this land stood Taichung Prefecture, and at its heart lay Taichung City, one of the wealthiest trading hubs in the Nan province. Although it was not among the most prestigious cities of the empire, it shone as a center of commerce. 4 noble families held residence within its walls, while countless merchants, scholars, artisans, and travelers filled its streets. The city pulsed with prosperity. On the western side of Taichung City stood the estate of the Gan clan, a family of extremely successful merchants. The Gan clan owned more than 20 restaurants across cities in the prefecture. And in smaller towns they dominated the market completely. Here in the large provincial capital, they were considered one of many elite families. Yet their property remained impressive, a large compound in the richest district, staffed by more than 40 servants. On a scorching midday, a young man dressed in clean but travel-worn Confucian robes walked slowly down a street. He looked to be in his early 20s, carrying a heavy package wrapped in dusty gray cloth on his back. As he observed the busy scene, his eyes fell on a polished gate bearing the characters of the Gan clan. Seeing the name Gan Estate, he smiled quietly to himself. He approached the gate, studied it briefly, and knocked firmly. Footsteps rushed from within. A middle-aged servant opened the door with a respectful look. But the moment he recognized only a dusty young traveler, the warmth on his face cooled. Straightening his posture, he asked with affected politeness who this visitor wished to see. The young man cupped his hands and smiled gently. He asked whether this was the residence of Uncle Gan Kai. The servant's eyes widened in surprise. The disrespect melted away. If this traveler truly knew the master's personal name, he might be someone important. Stuttering slightly with sudden courtesy, he asked whether the young man might be a relative. Han Li calmly replied that he was named Han Li, a distant relative who had come to pay his respects. It had been 1 full year since Han Li entered secluded cultivation. During that time, he had used the Heavenly Corpse Pearl and the Vajra relic to successfully refine the first layer of the Brightjod arts. The violent baleful energy raging in his body had finally settled, though not yet completely dissolved. Knowing the danger still remained, he came here for the next step in his plan to rid himself of the lingering poison that threatened his cultivation. After hesitating briefly, the servant explained that Master Gan Kai had left early in the morning to meet fellow scholars and was not yet home. The household was currently being managed by the eldest son. He offered to report Han Li's arrival. Han Li thanked him calmly and stood waiting outside the gate. As he observed the sprawling estate and passing carriages, he sensed, without even extending his spiritual perception, that many cultivators lived in this mortal city. Even more curious, many powerful cultivators seemed to be staying here intentionally. That struck him as strange. Why would people who cultivated the immortal path dwell in the mortal world? After the length of time it takes to finish a cup of tea, the gate opened again. A refined young man wearing embroidered robes emerged, accompanied by the same servant. He introduced himself as Gan Yu, the eldest son of the Gan clan, though he admitted he had never heard of any distant relative named Han Li before. He could not ignore courtesy. He invited Han Li inside to speak in the reception hall. Han Li accepted without hesitation. The gate closed behind them with a quiet thud. 2 hours later, a carriage returned to the Gan estate. The master of the house, Gan Kai, a plump man in noble blue robes around 50 years of age, stepped down. He asked his gatekeeper whether anything had happened while he was away. The servant reported that a young man named Han had arrived claiming to be his nephew, and that he was now chatting enthusiastically with the young lord in the hall. Gan Kai paused mid-step, eyebrows rising. His voice betrayed confusion. A nephew? Someone surnamed Han? The gatekeeper quickly suggested calling guards if the visitor was a fraud. But Gan Kai waved the idea away. He remembered, vaguely, that he might have such a relative, though the memory was buried beneath 20 years of time. He ordered the servant to remain at his post and hurried into the estate. Still in his travel clothes, he walked straight to the main hall. Before he entered, he heard his son's cheerful voice speaking confidently about Confucian teachings, praising Han Li's understanding. His son's enthusiasm brought a trace of unease to Gan Chi's eyes. But after a brief pause, he pushed forward. Gan Yu rose when he saw his father and introduced Han Li. Gan Kai nodded, waved his son aside, and asked Han Li to prove his identity. Did he have a letter? A keepsake? Anything that could confirm his claim? Han Li smiled faintly and took out a sparkling jade pendant. The moment Gan Kai saw it, his expression changed completely. He accepted the pendant with trembling hands. Studying it closely, memories that he had believed lost surfaced in an instant. He became solemn, with visible emotion. He declared that Han Li must indeed be the young descendant of that hidden branch of the family. Without delay, he invited Han Li to his private study, saying there were personal matters to discuss about his deceased aunt. He almost dragged Han Li forward with excitement. Gan Yu was left alone in the hall, stunned. He had never heard of any such relative in the Gan clan. Inside the study, Gan Kai closed the door carefully, then bowed deeply to Han Li. His voice was respectful, almost reverent. Han Li waved his sleeve, and a light blue force lifted Gan Kai upright without physical contact. He told the man there was no need to question his origins. The only thing Gan Kai needed to know was that Han Li had been sent by the people who once guided the Gan clan's hidden affairs. Gan Chi's doubts evaporated at the display of supernatural power. He understood that Han Li was connected to the two mysterious figures who had once supported the Gan clan, then vanished 2 decades earlier. With great relief, he said that Han Li had arrived at exactly the right moment. Han Li nodded and spoke with a commanding tone. I've only arrived at your Gan clan in passing. I have more important affairs to attend to, but I will require assistance from your connections to the mortal world. Outside of Taichung City, there were many unremarkable Confucian schools, one of which was a mid-grade school by the name of Pure Revelations Academy. If there was anything notable to say about it, it was that it was constructed on the renowned Jadefield Mountains. The Jadefield Mountains stretched across the land like a serene green ribbon, their peaks gentle rather than imposing, yet what they lacked in grandeur, they made up for in beauty and spiritual richness. Flowers bloomed throughout all 4 seasons. Rare spirit trees and fruits clung to the slopes, and gentle clouds drifted like silk scarves along the mountaintops. Among the 13 recognized spirit mountains in Taichung Prefecture, Jadefield was ranked first. To mortals, it was a blessed place of scholarly pursuit. To cultivators, it was a mountain nourished by quiet spiritual veins. Pure Revelations Academy stood on illusory cloud peak, occupying the entire upper half of the mountain. Though outwardly it was only a Confucian academy, its history carried a layer of quiet mystery. When it was built over 1,000 years earlier, the nearby Taoist temples did not oppose its construction. In fact, monks and priests respected its students, offering courtesy that shocked local inhabitants. The academy's behavior was strange as well. It recruited disciples of all ages, sometimes accepting children as young as 6 and adults well into their 20s. It recruited irregularly, sometimes several times a year. other times remaining silent for 4 or even 8 years. And once accepted, many students simply faded into the academy without ever leaving through the front gate again. These oddities fascinated the mortals living on the lower slopes. To them, Pure Revelation's academy was both unremarkable and unknowable. Its name was rarely heard outside the region, and yet it seemed to hold a place the temples willingly respected. On a certain day, 2 figures slowly ascended the mountain path that wound toward the academy. The first was a dignified middle-aged scholar with calm features and scholarly bearing. The second was a youth of around 20 years, with tanned skin and a simple, ordinary appearance. This was Han Li, who had appeared at the Gan estate 1 month earlier. He wore his plainness-like armor, hiding his cultivation behind a humble exterior. The middle-aged scholar's sleeves fluttered lightly in the mountain wind as he spoke. "Esteemed nephew Han, the academy finished recruiting disciples 2 months ago. But I heard from old fellow Gan that you know some Taoist techniques and understand the existence of cultivators. Because of that, I brought you here for a test. Whether they accept you depends on destiny. Since I am friends with the academy's senior teacher Lu, I will take you to him. If he deems you acceptable, you may remain here to study." Han Li bowed his head slightly. "I have heard about your arrangements. Uncle Gan already spoke of them. Whether the academy accepts me or not, he will remember this favor." As he walked, Han Li allowed the aura of the 4th layer of the energy condensation stage to quietly radiate from his body. It was just enough to prove he possessed spiritual roots, but shallow enough that even ordinary cultivators would not doubt that he was merely a low-grade vagrant practitioner. 1 month earlier, Han Li had asked Ji Yukai, an agent of the Feng clan, to help him enter any large cultivation sect. He had no preference for Taoist, Buddhist, or Confucian schools. The Feng clan had long operated in secret, cultivating relationships with mortal officials and wandering cultivators, because Gan Kai believed Han Li's origins were tied to the mysterious Feng clan. He dared not refuse Han Li's request. Gan Kai was cautious by nature, and feared Han Li might bring harm to the Gan clan. But the clan's businesses secretly belonged to the Feng clan. If Han Li presented the right documents, he could erase the Gan clan in a single night, as long as Han Li promised not to involve them after entering a sect. Gan Kai had little choice, so after several days of quiet preparation, he arranged for a respected instructor named Yan to escort Han Li to the academy. The reason for choosing a Confucian school was simple. Confucian sects accepted disciples more openly, as long as a person had spiritual roots, a clean background, and was not tied to a wicked sect. They might be accepted even if they had once learned techniques elsewhere. Teacher Yan owed Gan Kai a significant favor and believed strongly in loyalty. He agreed without hesitation. As they walked upward, Teacher Yan sighed. "It seems Brother Gan values you greatly. But that is no surprise. Those with spiritual roots are 1 in 10,000. It is only a pity that I do not have spiritual roots. Otherwise, I would have also entered the academy to pursue the path of cultivation." Han Li only smiled, keeping his thoughts to himself. The mountain path rose higher, and the trees grew thicker and more vibrant. A soft bell tone drifted across the sky, melodious and resonant, ringing through the hearts of all who heard it. Teacher Yan paused and gazed toward a distant peak. "The Treasure Spirit Temple's clear hum bell is truly rare," he murmured. "But the senior monk in charge is excessive to strike it 3 times in one day." Han Li glanced up, a quiet glint flashing in his eyes. A Buddhist temple existed on the mountain, but when he sensed the bell again, he realized the treasure was merely a top-grade magic tool, nothing truly magnificent. He folded his sleeves behind his back and followed Teacher Yan to a wide viewing platform. Suddenly, the scenery opened before them. A lush bamboo forest spread across the mountainside like a sea of emerald. With red and white buildings scattered among the stalks, stone paths wound through the bamboo, leading deeper toward the academy. Teacher Yan pointed. "Let us go. The main entrance is rarely open. We will use the side gate." After circling the forest and passing several turns on a narrow path, they arrived at a tall black gate. Teacher Yan knocked lightly. The gate opened soundlessly, revealing a young man dressed in white Confucian robes. His posture was respectful, his voice polite when he recognized Teacher Yan. "Teacher Yan, have you come to see Senior Teacher Lu?" Han Li silently observed. The young man had the energy of the third layer of the condensation stage. Yet he treated a mortal scholar with deep respect. Han Li found it amusing. In the heavenly south, this would never happen. Cultivators bowed to no mortals. But here, Confucian rules forced even cultivators to show courtesy to scholars of status. Teacher Yan asked about Senior Teacher Lu's presence, and the youth quickly sent a voice transmission talisman into the air. A streak of crimson light shot upward and vanished beyond the bamboo canopy. Moments later, Han Li felt a powerful spiritual sense sweep over them. It was strong and precise. From the intensity alone, he judged that Senior Teacher Lu was at the early stage of core formation. Stronger than he had expected, Han Li would have preferred someone weaker, someone who could not see through his disguise. Still, the situation was acceptable. A tremor of spiritual energy moved through the air above them, like a ripple spreading across still water. Then a calm voice resonated from the void, carrying effortless authority. "Is it Brother Yan? I am currently seeing a guest. But Brother Yan may as well come in. Oh, and you may bring that young friend of yours as well." When this was said, the white-robed youth led Teacher Yan and Han Li inside. After walking through a pathway for a short while, they passed through several courtyards where Han Li heard sounds of paper and flipping pages. Exactly as one would hear of an ordinary academy. The rhythm of turning pages mixed with soft murmurs of students reciting texts, echoing gently beneath the bamboo eaves. It made the entire mountain feel like a peaceful place of study rather than a cultivation ground. Han Li was surprised. Although this place was called a cultivation academy, the atmosphere was like a mortal school. Why would lower-level cultivators spend their precious time studying books instead of deepening their cultivation of spiritual energy? His confusion must have shown in his eyes, because the white-robed youth gave a warm smile and explained the scene to him. He said that the students they heard were lower academy disciples, and to advance into the upper academy, a disciple needed both spirit roots and something called noble spirit. Most Confucian cultivation methods did not rely only on spiritual energy, but also on noble spirit. The stronger and purer one's noble spirit, the farther that person would walk on the cultivation path, and the better their future achievements would be. Han Li offered a polite smile in return, quietly filing away that information. He now understood that the Confucian path emphasized righteousness and inner refinement, and spiritual energy was only one part of their cultivation. Even so, he was curious about how far such a path could lead. The three continued walking, moving through pavilions linked by stone walkways. Sunlight filtered through bamboo leaves above, leaving ripples of green light dancing on the ground beneath their feet. After several turns, they arrived at a small, serene courtyard. The moment they stepped inside, Han Li felt a faint ripple of isolation around his ears. The soft sounds of the academy disappeared completely, like someone had gently shut the world behind a veil. A soundproofing restriction was active here. Teacher Yan did not react, showing that he had been here before. The white-robed youth stopped outside the courtyard gate, because he was not qualified to enter. After giving them a respectful farewell, he disappeared into one of the nearby pavilions. Teacher Yan adjusted his robes and walked slowly toward the largest room. Before he could knock, a gentle sound came from the door, and it opened by itself. A calm voice floated out, belonging to Senior Teacher Lu. He welcomed Teacher Yan inside, explaining that he was hosting someone from the Royal Serenity Monastery, a Taoist nun named Hualian. Hearing that name, Teacher Yan was shocked for a brief moment, but he entered without hesitation, and Han Li followed closely. Inside the reception room, two people sat opposite one another. The first was a man who seemed a little over 40 years old, with a thin face and long, neatly groomed beard. His expression was composed, and his eyes held a sharp intelligence. That was Senior Teacher Lu. Sitting across from him was a young woman wearing yellow Taoist robes. She looked to be in her 20s, graceful and poised, with fair skin and dark black hair. Her bearing was calm and elegant, revealing that she was someone with a strong background despite her young appearance. Even though she was only at the late foundation establishment stage, She spoke casually with senior teacher Lu, like the two were equals. As the two new arrivals entered, the Taoist nun's eyes swept over them. Before teacher Yan could speak, she smiled and called him by name. She praised his reputation and said that even though she paid little attention to mortal matters, she had still heard of his prestigious fame. Her tone was warm and confident, though she paid almost no attention to Han Li. Teacher Yan saluted deeply and responded with sincere respect, saying he had admired her from a distance for a long time. Han Li also stepped forward, bowing to both cultivators and greeting them respectfully. His manner was humble and restrained, exactly as a young cultivator seeking entry into a sect should behave. Senior teacher Lu blinked, his gaze falling on Han Li with curiosity. He asked who this young friend was. Teacher Yan calmly introduced Han Li as the nephew of a close friend, explaining that he had brought him here hoping to see if he was qualified to become a disciple of the academy. Senior teacher Lu studied Han Li, falling silent for a moment before speaking. He stated that Han Li's spirit roots appeared ordinary, and his aptitude was not impressive. Even so, he could examine him more closely to confirm. Han Li stepped forward without hesitation and allowed senior teacher Lu to take his wrist. A cold pulse of spiritual energy washed through his arm, and Han Li felt the core formation cultivator's spiritual sense probing gently within his body. But Han Li was not truly worried. His own cultivation was far deeper, and his spiritual sense far stronger than the teacher could imagine. Everything that senior teacher Lu sensed was exactly what Han Li allowed him to sense. He had chosen to reveal the weakest acceptable aptitude, 4 attribute spirit roots. Lacking metal, the kind of cultivation aptitude that was barely worthy of acceptance. His bones and spiritual nature were also disguised to look ordinary, hiding his true power. When the examination ended, senior teacher Lu let go of his wrist and spoke. He explained that Han Li's 4 attribute spirit roots would make cultivation very difficult, and his age was already quite advanced for a beginner. The chance of reaching the foundation establishment stage was extremely low. If he worked hard for his entire lifetime, he might at most reach the 8th layer of the energy condensation stage. For someone like that, freedom as a loose cultivator might be better than entering a sect and being trapped on an impossible path. Han Li drooped his head slightly, showing a helpless expression. He replied with a sincere tone, saying that he had heard similar evaluations before, but he believed effort could overcome his shortcomings. He wished to try the path of cultivation, even if success was unlikely. His answer stirred a faint reaction in the senior teacher's expression. He exchanged a look with teacher Yan and then asked if Han Li had any skills beyond basic cultivation. The question surprised Han Li. Why would a core formation cultivator ask someone at such a low level about special skills? Perhaps he was testing whether Han Li truly wished to cultivate or only wanted to use the academy's resources. Han Li made his decision quickly. He said that he had touched upon the Tao of tool refinement, though he had only managed to refine the most basic tools and did not consider himself skilled. He even showed embarrassment, pretending to be unsure of his own value. The room shifted slightly. Senior teacher Lu seemed somewhat surprised. The Taoist nun showed a strange expression, as though she had unexpectedly discovered something valuable. Tool refinement was not common among loose cultivators, because it required time, resources, and instruction. Many wandering cultivators could not afford it. Han Li explained his story briefly, saying he had found a tool refinement jade slip and practiced it casually. He was careful to emphasize his inexperience. True mastery would attract trouble, and he did not want attention. Before senior teacher Lu could respond, the Taoist nun spoke up with excitement. She addressed Han Li directly, saying that if he understood tool refinement, it was a great help. She mentioned that her sect needed someone with exactly his skills. Since he was not yet a disciple of this academy, why not enter the Royal Serenity Monastery instead? She said her monastery was preparing to refine many treasures and lacked a low-level disciple who understood basic tool refinement. If he entered their sect, she would ensure he was taken care of, both in cultivation and in learning. She even added that she had originally come to borrow a tool refinement disciple from the academy, but now that she had found one here, there was no need. Her proposal shocked both teacher Yan and Han Li. Teacher Yan immediately objected, saying that her monastery was an institution for nuns, and it would be inappropriate for a man like Han Li to enter. Nun Hualien smiled and explained that while the monastery was a female institution, there were indeed a few male disciples specializing in fire attribute arts living outside the main monastery grounds. Han Li would not disturb their traditions. Even so, Teacher Yan resisted. He wanted Han Li to enter Pure Revelations Academy, because he had made great effort to arrange this. He spoke firmly, even though he was facing a powerful foundation establishment cultivator. His loyalty to his friend's request and his Confucian values drove him to argue on behalf of Han Li. Nun Hualien remained calm. She explained that with Han Li's aptitude, his future within the academy would be severely limited. He would at best become an ordinary disciple with no prospects. In her sect, however, he would find support for both his cultivation and his craft. It was a genuine offer, and she seemed confident the choice was obvious. Teacher Yan hesitated and then turned to Senior Teacher Lu, seeking his opinion. Senior Teacher Lu sighed and said that since Han Li was not yet a disciple, he was free to choose. It was true that the academy could not help someone with such weak aptitude, while the monastery clearly had a need for his ability. Entering the monastery might not be a bad choice. The room fell quiet. The three cultivators looked at Han Li, each with a different emotion. Teacher Yan was worried, the Taoist nun hopeful, and Senior Teacher Lu neutral. Han Li felt all eyes focusing on him, waiting for his decision. He repeated the name in his mind silently. Royal Serenity Monastery. He recalled that it was a Taoist monastery located somewhere on Jadefield Mountain. He had not known it was a female monastery, nor anything about its inner workings. The offer startled him so suddenly that he found himself at a complete loss. The offer had thrown Han Li's plans into chaos. He did not know anything about this new sect, nor if it would be as fitting for him as the Pure Revelations Academy. Moreover, if he refused such a generous offer and still chose to enter the Pure Revelations Academy, he feared it would draw unnecessary suspicion from Senior Teacher Lu. Han Li could only keep his calm expression while rolling his eyes inside, silently cursing Nun Hualien for creating this unpredictable situation. He collected himself and spoke as politely as possible. Han Li said that he did not know much about the Royal Serenity Monastery. Yet since it was described as a female monastery, it would probably not be suitable for cultivating techniques designed for a male body. It was the best objection he could think of under such pressure. Nun Hualien simply smiled, as if everything he said was completely within her expectations. She explained that the Royal Serenity Monastery was only a portion of a greater sect known as the Three Royals Monastery. Within this structure there was also the Royal Yang Monastery, which specialized in male cultivation. Anything a male cultivator required would be readily available. She continued speaking calmly, even mentioning that Han Li's body seemed to lack noble spirit energy. If he were to enter the Pure Revelations Academy, he would be forced to cultivate that unfamiliar energy from the beginning. Her sect, however, could offer cultivation techniques better suited for his current condition. She even added a subtle pressure with her words, suggesting that if he truly achieved mastery in Confucian techniques, he would gain power far beyond Taoist methods. But such a path was unimaginably distant for a new cultivator. Nun Hualien finally ended her reasoning by asking whether Han Li thought her sect was unworthy of him. Senior Teacher Lu then joined in, speaking in a tone that sounded like impartial guidance. He agreed with Nun Hualien's reasoning. Confucian cultivation progressed more slowly at the beginning than even Buddhist methods. He claimed that the Royal Serenity Monastery was a better starting point for someone like Han Li, especially with Nun Hualien personally promising to care for his cultivation. Under such conditions, he even had a chance to reach the foundation establishment stage, something that would otherwise be nearly impossible for a man with 4 attribute spirit roots and an average aptitude. Listening to the two, Han Li understood that he no longer had the freedom to choose. Declining would expose hidden motives and draw attention to himself. Accepting, however, would place him in unfamiliar territory, forced to adapt to a path he did not plan for. He quickly weighed the risks. The Royal Serenity Monastery still resided on Jadefield Mountain. The spiritual veins were the same, so he would not lose access to valuable cultivation resources. As long as he remained cautious, he should be able to keep his secrets intact. Han Li forced himself to display excitement. He thanked the two senior cultivators and accepted the offer. Both senior teacher Lu and Nun Hualian were satisfied. Teacher Yan, the only person who truly wanted Han Li to enter the Pure Revelations Academy, reluctantly stayed silent. He could no longer oppose Han Li's decision once it was spoken aloud. With the matter decided, the four people spoke for a while inside the room. Surprisingly, the topics did not revolve around cultivation, mystical treasures, or anything related to the cultivation world. Instead, the three senior cultivators casually discussed political changes in the Great Jin Empire. As if they were ordinary officials, Han Li listened quietly, puzzled. It was natural for Confucian schools to be involved with mortal politics. But it was strange that a Taoist nun seemed equally knowledgeable and interested. Could it be that this monastery was also deeply connected to the world of mortals? Han Li kept the thought buried while pretending to be absorbed in their discussion. During the conversation, the footsteps of a young person sounded from outside the door. A young voice respectfully announced that he had brought the purple essence copper from the storehouse. Exactly as requested, senior teacher Lu instructed him to enter. When Han Li heard the name of the material, his interest sharpened. Purple essence copper was an excellent component for refining top-grade tools or even powerful treasures. Although it was not particularly rare for someone like Han Li, it was a priceless treasure to cultivators at this level. The doors slowly opened, revealing a child no more than 12 years old holding a red tray. A silver cloth bulged over the top, covering whatever was inside. The child walked carefully into the room, placed the tray before senior teacher Lu and Nun Hualian, then respectfully bowed and left without a sound. Senior teacher Lu pushed the tray toward Nun Hualian with a slight smile. He mentioned that her monastery had been searching everywhere for this rare material. So they must be refining something truly precious. He casually asked whether they were creating a top-grade tool or even a magic treasure. Nun Hualian hesitated only for a moment. She explained that she did not know. She was only following the orders of her fourth senior nun, and that senior teacher Lu should ask her directly. The instant fourth senior nun was mentioned, senior teacher Lu's expression subtly shifted. He gave a small laugh and claimed he was only asking out of curiosity. Nun Hualian then lifted the silver cloth. The tray was filled with glowing pieces of purple essence copper, each stone shimmering gold beneath a purple inner light. She smiled with satisfaction and accepted the material with a sweep of light into her storage pouch. Her task completed, she exchanged a few final words with senior teacher Lu and rose to leave. Senior teacher Lu did not attempt to keep her longer. He called for the same child to lead Nun Hualian out. Han Li followed, offering polite farewells to the two seniors before leaving with her. Once the two of them departed, the room fell silent. Teacher Yan and senior teacher Lu sat across from one another without speaking. A troubled heaviness surrounded teacher Yan, filling the air with tension. At last, senior teacher Lu broke the silence. His tone was low and emotionless as he asked whether teacher Yan had completed his preparations. He stated very clearly that in order to fight the monster named Niu Tiand, he would have to employ a secret technique known as the Ascensojoin Devouring Arts. They were at the final stage of preparation. He asked whether teacher Yan had any regrets about throwing away his life. Teacher Yan's eyes hardened, his voice grim. As long as he could take revenge for the destruction of his clan, the cost of a single life meant nothing. His only fear was that after senior teacher Lu completed practicing this sinister ability, he would be too afraid of Niu Tian to actually take action. He clenched his hands tightly, fingernails cutting into his palms at the memory of his family's fate. Senior teacher Lu did not get angry. He responded calmly, almost gently. He explained that he would inherit teacher Yan's noble spirit energy, which would still contain traces of teacher Yan's powerful resentment. If he did not kill Niu Tian, that resentment would remain and prevent him from using the noble spirit energy properly. Furthermore, no one else would help teacher Yan take vengeance against the enforcer of the Black Yang sect, one of the 10 great Devil Dao sects. Only a Confucian cultivator like himself dared to oppose the Devil Dao. Teacher Yan finally admitted that he understood. He had tried to make friends with other cultivators, but none possessed the power or willingness of senior teacher Lu. Most cultivators feared provoking the devil Dao for the sake of one mortal survivor like himself. Senior teacher Lu explained further. He did not hide the fact that Niu Tian was a fearsome figure. However, the Confucian and devil Dao sects were always hostile toward one another. Supporting teacher Yan not only showed his sincerity, but also allowed him to deepen his Confucian cultivation using teacher Yan's noble spirit. He even said that for 5 years he had honored every request teacher Yan made. That alone proved his intentions were honest. Teacher Yan stared at him with ice in his eyes, still doubtful. Finally, senior teacher Lu offered a powerful guarantee. He would swear a heartlock oath before the portrait of their noble sage. If he failed to avenge teacher Yan, his noble spirit energy would stop progressing forever. Teacher Yan finally nodded. That oath would be enough. He explained coldly that as the last surviving member of the Yan clan, he could not help being overly cautious. Senior teacher Lu waved his hand, saying he understood. The ritual would be prepared in 1 month. Teacher Yan should settle his affairs and make funeral preparations before returning to the academy. The room sank into silence once more. Then teacher Yan suddenly broke the quiet, asking why Nun Hualien insisted on taking Han Li. Was the academy unwilling to have another tool refinement disciple? Senior teacher Lu only smiled. He explained that he used the opportunity to his advantage. The Royal Serenity Monastery was refining something extremely important and urgently needed a disciple to refine materials. Lending their own low-grade refiners might place them in unpredictable danger. Han Li appeared at the perfect moment. By offering him, the academy fulfilled the request without risking its own disciples. Teacher Yan accepted the explanation without further concern. If he truly wanted answers, he would have pressed harder. Meanwhile, Nun Hualien was bringing Han Li along on a scarf magic tool. They were flying toward a shorter point of illusory Cloud Peak. In this episode, we saw 5 parts of Han Li's journey woven into one complete chapter of his path toward immortality. From the mountain peak of Jadefield to the hidden halls of Pure Revelations Academy, Han Li continued to conceal his true strength while quietly observing the world around him. Across these 5 episodes, we followed his careful steps through unfamiliar territory, his encounter with the Academy's teachers, and the first hints of the deeper mysteries hidden behind its Confucian façade. We witnessed how Han Li balanced patience with ambition, choosing humility instead of force. Though his cultivation remains disguised, every decision he makes reveals his sharp mind and steady heart. Each meeting, each quiet exchange, and each step up the mountain brings him closer to uncovering the Academy's true origins and the secrets behind its ancient legacy. What happens next? Stay tuned for the next episode of Immortal's Journey to Immortality. If you enjoyed this episode or found it interesting, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to receive notifications for the newest episodes of Han Li's journey. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again in the next video.